Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is, I guess it's Thursday, is that right? Wow, doesn't seem like Thursday, but it is. So today is Thursday, it's June 4th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and um, it was just a range day. You can see we had a channel working down, we had a break and a new low, and that created your overnight highs and lows. And really, we traded up, back up, we tested those highs, traded all the way back down. We failed a little bit out the bottom side, got back in, and now we're back inside the range again. Of course, up until 2 o'clock, which is pretty much our cutoff for any new trades, we're still within the overnight highs and lows. So, but we did have a trend up, and we had another trend down, and there were a couple of ways to look at this. The first leg, there's your first leg up, and we started back up from, actually, we started back up right there. And that gives you a target real close to the high. So that'd be your first target with the highs being your other target. So, uh, and we reached that pretty much to the tick and turned down. And then we made this one big leg down, which measure that one, and then look for your next leg down. And that gives us a target very similar to what we had before, just shy of the, we were just shy of the overnight highs, and now we're just shy of the overnight lows. Of course, we reached that, breached a little bit lower temporarily, got back inside, it acted as support again, and we trended back up, and we're still inside that overnight highs and lows. So big picture, this is a range, but there is a trend up, there's a spike and channel up, and then there's a trend down. And this trend line looks valid here, but the problem was trying to find the other side of it. Looked like maybe it was going to be right there, but we pushed on through that, and that could just be an overshoot. So that may actually be where it's at. But if you come down here and drop it there, that could be right as well. But you just never really got any. And that does look correct. That does look like the midline. Looks like we're working off both sides of that line. So that's probably it. But you really couldn't get that till after 2 o'clock. So it didn't do you a whole lot of good. But obviously you probably want to keep that trend line on the upside. But it was just really kind of hard to know exactly where the lower side was. But I think it's pretty obvious that's a midline. And you can see prices working. What's interesting is if you notice where the midline, where it played both sides of that line right here, that was before you even got up here and started the downtrend. And that's where market geometry comes in. This stuff is real. Don't ask me why or how. All I can tell you is it's real. And when you sit here and look at charts for years, you start to see it and you start to recognize it and you start to believe in it. Otherwise, people will tell you that the market's random. But how? I mean, how could that act? Think about it. This is the far right of your chart right here. And look at prices playing off that line. And then watch them come back and test it. Playing off of it again. And they turn up. And then they're playing off of it, the trend line there. You wouldn't have even had that trend line yet. But now they're playing off that trend line. And then look at it bouncing off the midline. Look at it testing it from both sides. It's testing it all the way down there. So again, don't ask me why or how that works. All I can tell you is it's real. And so if you find these lines, it really helps you to figure out what prices are doing and where they're headed. This one was a little tough today because it wasn't that hard to find. Of course, by lunchtime, 1 o'clock, you would have this trend line. You really could have had it right up here, but I wouldn't have trusted it till we came back again. And when it did, then you got a good idea this trend line's correct. You just don't know where the lower side is, because I was really thinking this was the lower side. Look how well that fits. And I was really thinking that was it, but I believe it's down here, and that's just a midline, and prices were playing both sides of that midline. So this was the downtrend really, and you're better off really to go the shorter term stuff. So you got a trend channel down, then you're sideways here. you drop down to another little range, and you come back up, and then you get another trend down into the 2 o'clock hour. You're better off to play those shorter term ones. Obviously, you didn't even need this trend line here because you could have played it off the range. You came back up, you tested it, then you tried to go higher once, twice, and when it broke higher and failed and turned down, you want to go short there, regardless of whether that trend line's there or not, because you're playing the range. And obviously, if you know this trend line's here, you're thinking, hey, we probably got a bigger channel here, so we might go a lot further to the downside this time. So I need to try to get on with this. The key is just how far am I going to be able to ride it. And if you catch this, you can ride it all the way. And you might have even had an entry here on this lower high, but notice how neutral my bar is. I'll back out in a little bit and you'll see it, but just a big neutral doji there is all I got. So, but now that you see the big picture, let's back out. And we'll take a look at this. But you had the channel working down and you had the break. And notice you had a first entry, then you made another leg down. And you did make a new low there, so you got a break and a new low. But when it tries to come back and fails right there, it can't even get back to the EMA. Notice that's a little bit of congestion. So you can also treat that like it breaks higher and turns down. You got enough room to get out here, so you probably want to just try to ride this down for another move down to get a convincing new low, and that's what you get there. This one's real close to being green, but I made it red because notice the new high and first entry, and then you get a second leg down, and it fails pretty quickly. And that is congestion, so it's like a little failed breakout, so you can trade it like that as well. And the trend is down and has been down. And we're looking for, I mean, we actually barely already made a new low, but it doesn't surprise me that we pushed down again. And then we bounce. And so you're looking for maybe a reversal pattern here, but you just don't really get one. It just keeps working higher, and you finally pull back here. It does come back to the trend line, but it's an inside bar, and that one's real bearish, and this one's still got stems on it. And so then you pull back again here, but another bearish bar. So you just don't really get a chance until right here you finally get a second entry long. Fairly decent bar. This looks a little congestive too, but it's still first entry, and it tries to go lower in second entry. So I'm not against taking that second entry long right there, because we do have a channel working up. There's a spiking channel, and that's the first break. So we're probably going to try to retest the high, and that's what we do. We run up, and then we just kind of correct for a while. We get stuck in this range. But notice we come back right here. And while you're not looking for second entries, if you get one that's a setup playing the range rules, then of course you want to take it. And notice that new high, there's a first entry. So there's a second entry long right there, but notice we made that low. We tested it once, we tested it twice. So that's really a third test. And we broke a little lower, so we probably trapped some people. So if we break higher, then we're probably at least going to the other side. And that's what we do. We run up here, and notice how we're finding resistance. And then we finally get a setup here with enough room to get out. You may not could have got in this trade. Really, you probably had to drop a limit order and see if it would fill you. And it's not a sure thing if it did or not. So you may not have got in that trade, but you may have a little better setup than me, or a little different setup. So, and then it breaks lower here and fails and goes out the other side. This one's green only because there's not enough room here. It's because you don't know that it's going to get through like that, so it could turn right back down again. So you got to have room. But what you might do, this thing actually broke lower and turned and ran out the other side. Well, as soon as it broke out up here, you might drop a limit order just a tick or two back, just to give you enough room to get out before here. And if you did that and could get filled, you could take that trade. Or if you had a smaller bar down here, if your signal bar is a little different and you got a bullish smaller bar down here, you could take it. But the way it is on my chart, I could only mark it green based on using the limit order, trying to get a little better entry to have enough room to get out. That'd be the only way you could enter that one. Then we run up, there's a couple legs up, there's no real setup, and then we're just going sideways again. I don't like any of these. This is too tight. We do kind of break out here. but by that time it's kind of congestive looking right there, and the trend is up. You do get a second entry right here, but again, very neutral bar to almost negative. It actually closes a little bit to the lower side, so it's just a neutral bar really, and you can't use that for a signal bar. And then again, you don't have enough room to get out here, and there is a second entry short right there, but you don't have any room. And then finally you get another move, a chance to get long down here. This bar is close, but it never breaks above it. You probably could have used that one. It is an inside bar though, but we're playing range rules, and that doesn't matter as much. You're not really as worried about second entries, and if your congestion's on the other end of the side you want to enter on towards the other end, you can probably use it. Plus there's a little failed break lower there a few times, and then it bounces, and all it was prices were trying to get back to this trend line, and notice they bounce off of it to the tick. Let me back out where you can see that. And I actually drew this off the upper side and drug it down to here, and when it bounces right there, you got a good idea you're probably right. So I like going long there. And really you can see there's two legs back. It's just two legs back to the trend line. That's a two-legged move. Although if you count the breaks, the entries, there's a first entry, second entry, and then a third entry. That's actually a third entry, but you can clearly see there's two legs back right there. And so that's another reason to like that trade. And you're just looking for the scalp, but it keeps going, so you get a little better than what you expected. And what it usually happens, it fails on the breakout. And there's actually a second entry short coming back. I didn't mark this one because we're in an uptrend, but we were real close to a measured move, and this breaks higher, and look how far you are away from the EMA. So if you recognize all that, you may take that trade. I'm going to still mark it green because it's a counter trend trade. But notice your little trend line working up, and you do close outside, and the fact that it breaks higher and turns down, if it pushes on through that bottom all in one move, we're probably at least coming back to the EMA and maybe the trend line, and look at it drop. And that's what you expect on this. I mean, we ranged across there for, it was about 20 minutes there. Okay, but anyway, you get a failed breakout. Now you're a long way back to come back and test this, which you probably will, and you're a long way away from the EMA too. So you may ride that back. I tend to like those trades, but it is a counter trend trade at this point. You would expect this to break out successfully to the upside, which it does. You really just don't get a good setup here. I didn't mark this. This is just an inside bar, and the problem is you came back into the underneath this resistance. It didn't act as support. Look how prices shot right back through, and then it's trying to get through again, and it doesn't. That's not a good sign. Although the trend line ends up winning out and it goes higher, there's just no setup there. And you hate to see a trade take off like that without you, but the next time you try to take that trade, it'll break a tick or two higher and turn and make another leg down and stop you out. So there's just no setup there, so just ignore it. And don't let it bother you that it took off and you didn't get in on it. But notice we run up and we come back here, we make a first entry, and then we're moving down, and there's a second entry long right here, and it actually breaks lower, turns, and goes out the other side, all in one bar. I don't know if I would wait and go long here. That is a huge bar. You could still go long right there because this still meets our criteria where you would expect prices to retest the highs here and maybe even make a new high. If this resistance not too strong, you may make a new high, but you're going to at least probably test that because we've trended up pretty nicely here. You can see that trend. And so you're looking for that retest, and you run up, and of course it doesn't get through this time. Comes back, and it makes a high or a low. I marked this one green. This is mostly bullish. It meets this is bullish enough to meet our criteria, but there's a little 2-bar matching high, and there's not much room back to that resistance right there. And so it's a little bit questionable if you'd want to take that trade. And really the only way you could enter it without any more room there is to let it break higher and then maybe drop a limit order back far enough to see if you could get in it. But it just runs straight up, So unless you got in and out on this bar, you probably don't want to take this trade because you wouldn't want to let it come back here and bring you in. Although it might have and it might have worked, it's too risky for that. And you see it wasn't long before it's racing the other way. So this trade's really iffy. But that would be the only way you could enter is let it break higher. And if you could get a limit order filled on this same bar right here, just maybe back closer to the low with enough room to get out. Otherwise, no trade there. And we're just bumping around here. It's tempting to go short right here, but you'd be better off to wait because you're right at these lows. And notice it does come back and test it and gives you a nice lower high beneath the EMA with a big, nice bearish bar. Just go short below that. It actually broke higher, I think, and turned down and went out the other side. So you could have gone short one tick below that. But I just wait on this to close to make sure we weren't going to get back in that range. And just drop a sell stop right there below it and look at it go. And you get a runner here easily and it just takes off. It does come back here. Notice this is a new high, first entry, second entry. It's just a little far away from the EMA though. But it does confirm the trend line. It is a failed second entry long. Notice that eye again, first entry, second entry. And I want to clarify, this is not a second entry short. So make sure you get that. This is a second entry long that fails. And we weren't looking to take a second entry long, but if we see a second entry long that fails and gives us a chance to enter with the trend, that's what we're looking for here. So I'm just clarifying that because sure as shooting, somebody will send me a thing and say, you called this a second entry. What are you talking about? I only see a first entry. It's a first entry short, but it's a failed second entry long. So counting from right here. There's a new high right there, first entry, second entry, and it fails right at the key entry point, that trend line. It's a little further away from the EMA than I like, so that's the reason I made it green, but it's still a good trade. You actually make a lower high here, but now you're just getting way too far away from the EMA, and you see it wasn't very long till it snaps back. And this one's tempting, but it's just a first entry and it doesn't really, there's a couple of swings back, but that doesn't look like two legs back. That just looks like a leg back to me. And if you draw your trend line here, you can see that. So I just think it's too risky going short right there. And you get the lower high right here, and that's really when it breaks lower, it's a second entry, but you see you don't want to go, you never want to go short right into those lows like that. And look what happens, it bounces. And so you wouldn't have wanted to go short. You don't really get a chance to go long either. There's a higher low here, but notice you got 3 bars in a row, all below the EMA, all below the midline there. That's congestion. It would have worked, but it's just not worth it. And if you just patient a minute, then you get a breakout up here and a bearish bar and a chance to go short. And that's what you need right there is a bearish bar with enough room to get out. You go short one tick below that. There's a lower high here. Again, too neutral of a bar. Another lower high here, which would have looked like a failed second entry long, and probably some of y'all took it as a failed second entry long, but you don't have room to get out. So you wouldn't want to do that. Plus you're in the range and you don't want to forget about failed second entries and second entries unless they set up at the very edges. And so some of you probably got trapped right at the low there and then watched it bounce. And then guess what? You get another chance right there. Now that's a second entry at the fringe, and that's what you want. First entry, second entry. Big bearish bar, go short. Now you get a bounce off the lower side and you got a bullish bar. Just go long right there and it runs back up. Unfortunately, you don't get another short opportunity here, and this time it breaks through and takes off. I did not mark this trade, but this is a possibility here. Notice that low and there's a first entry and then it runs up here and it breaks higher and turns down. So that was the second entry short right there. But you didn't really have this trend line in place yet. So you're just kind of guessing. You're not back to the midline. There is the EMA. There is the midline, and it's really close to the midline. So you might, if you saw that and you saw the second entry, you might go short right there. I think you're better off to wait, but you might take that short. I'm at least going to make it green. You need to really see all that's going on there before you take that trade. Then you just get stuck down here at the lows. You can't enter short, and I don't see any longs. Maybe a long right there, but I'm not convinced that it won't touch the EMA and go lower there. So by waiting, you get a little better entry right up at the highs again, and a nice little small bearish bar. And it takes it a minute, but it would have worked, and it comes down, and what does it do? It bounces off the low again. And the only problem with this one is it's kind of like the previous one that I showed earlier. You don't have much room back to the highs there. So you don't have enough room to get out. So the only way you could take this is if you had a little better entry, or you let it break higher and you drop your limit order far enough where you got enough room to get out. It wouldn't have mattered, but you don't know that ahead of time because you're expecting it to turn back down right across there again. In this case, it goes higher. And that's too congestive. And then finally, you got to go higher once, try to go higher twice, and it actually breaks higher and turns down. And so that's a first entry, and that's a second entry all in one bar right there. So you could have gone, when it broke higher and turned down, you could have gone short one tick below that, or you could have waited here and probably just taken it right there. And it works down, and you come back, and again you get a first entry, and then it tries to go higher, so that's another second entry short. And again, I drew that line right across those lows right there and just drug it up, and it turns down right there at the EMA and that, and you get a second entry short, and that's a fairly bearish bar. And that gives you another nice move down, and you'd look for at least another measured leg right there. Leg one, leg two, and you see we got pretty much a perfect measured leg, and then it bounced a little bit. Somebody else gave me this little idea. He started, he said he was making his arrows a little different color just so you can see them, but yet they're not mixed in with all the other blue, and I like that idea, so I'm going to copy his little idea. So thanks for that suggestion for that trader that was doing that. So I'll start making these kind of an orangish color like that. They don't seem to, they'll be less confusing, I think, and they don't seem to clash with all the other blue lines. It takes a little more time to change all these colors, but it's worth it. So we don't do a lot of those lines, so it's not going to add that much time. But we'll back out here one more time, look at the big picture, and you can see that rally off the lows is still going. We may head all the way back to the top before it's over. So, but it was just a range day in the big picture, but we did have a nice trend up and then a nice two-tiered channel on a trend back down. And this one was a little more difficult to find. The trend line was really not that hard to find, but getting confirmation on the other side was difficult to find on this one. Even though it was kind of hard to confirm the other side, it wasn't very difficult at all to find that trend line. You just use our rules off the first few swings and it fits perfectly. So, but anyway, I'm going to actually get done under 25 minutes today if I shut up and wrap this up. So I'm going to wrap it up. This is probably going to do it for the week. I may do a little something tomorrow since we missed Tuesday. Just depends on how I'm feeling, if I quit early or whatever. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again most likely Monday. I may come in tomorrow and do something. We'll just have to see. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.